What a pleasure for you all to be listening to Dr. Peter Brukner today. Thanks, Dr. Peter Brukner, for joining us on the summit.
Pleasure, Tracy. Looking forward to it.
Well, I'm looking forward to it too. So the first question I want to ask you, Peter, is how's retirement going?
Retirement. Yeah, well, I've retired from sort of clinical practice, but I seem to be twice as busy as I was when I was in clinical practice. So, no, I'm not into the retirement. It's funny. I mean, a few of my colleagues, I'm nearly 70 now, 70 next year, and some of my sort of contemporaries are retiring, and I don't know, they play golf or play bridge or something like that. But it's not my scene, I'm afraid.
That's funny. So what's keeping you busy, Peter? So you want to talk about some of the big things you're involved in?
Oh, look, I have a whole range of interests, some of them nutrition related, some others. I still do a little bit of sports medicine, which is my background. I have an involvement with one of the AFL clubs here in Melbourne. It's like a day a week, more a sort of a mentor leadership sort of role. And I also look after a couple of amateur sporting clubs. I have a role at Trobe University. We have a sports medicine research centre there, which I'm involved with, and I'm actually at La Trobe trying to sort of combine my sports medicine and nutrition sort of interests, and we're doing some interesting research now on the role of an anti-inflammatory diet in osteoarthritis, and hopefully we'll have some good results to show from that. We've got some really good pilot data that's shown it's been really effective, but now we're about to embark on a larger program, probably over 3 years, and that'll be interesting. So that's a couple of days a week probably. I have various sort of business involvements and bits and pieces, but I guess the majority of my time is spent in the nutrition world. We started a not-for-profit charity called SugarByHalf 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm the chair of that, and we're working on a whole range of issues. We have a really good education program, and we're also trying to sort of coordinate the response to the Australian Dietary Guidelines review as well. But probably my major focus is on Defeat Diabetes, which is an app-based program that we released in January. It's similar to some of the programs overseas in the UK and the US, where basically it's all the information and the knowledge and the practical things you need to do to put your diabetes into remission using a low-carb lifestyle approach. And I spent most of lockdown, I guess, in Melbourne last year creating the content. I've had Paul Mason and Nicole Moore helping me with that. And between the three of us, we've put together a massive amount of content, probably 100 hours of videos and 50 articles. And it's a program of sort of 13 modules, but like 13 steps. I don't know why we chose 13. Everyone else chooses 10, 12, but it worked out. We thought 13 seemed to be right. And so you basically go through those modules, and every module consists of a main video lesson, and there's some what we call master classes if you want to learn more from Paul, Nicole, and myself about different topics. And then we have a whole bunch of articles available, action plan, quiz, and then you go on to the next module. And then as well as those modules, we have eating plans, meal plans, and then we have a whole bunch of great recipes with terrific photography, and some cooking demonstrations with a couple of chefs. So it's a pretty comprehensive program, and we're just rolling that out at the moment. So that's kept me pretty busy for the last 12 months or so. So yeah, life's hectic, and I'm a grandparent of a couple of little ones, and they keep me busy. So there's plenty to do.
I love that. Well, I'd really like to talk to you a bit about the Defeat Diabetes. So I guess, can we defeat diabetes? You talked about putting it into remission. So, how you haven't always thought the way you do about nutrition now. So, can you talk a little bit about what's changed, and then, how you believe that we can either prevent or put diabetes into remission?
Yeah, yeah, good question. I mean, when I went when I went through medical school a long time ago, um, we were taught that it was interesting. It was called mature onset diabetes then, because only old people got it. So they had to change the name to type 2 diabetes because younger and younger people were getting it. So that tells you something about the disease. And we were taught then, and medical students to this day are still taught that type 2 diabetes is a chronic progressive disease with inevitable progression, and there's nothing you can do to stop that progression. And you've just got to take more drugs, and eventually finish up on insulin, and with all the complications that we're very aware of, to whether it's to eyes, to kidney, to heart, to brain, and so on. And that's still the sort of current teaching and the current thinking. You see that written everywhere in text and online and so on. This idea of a chronic progressive disease, and I must admit, until a few years ago, I assumed that was the case because that's what I've been taught, and that's what I read all the time. So, you just believe what you're told. But I think now that there is ample evidence that a low carb approach can, in fact, put your diabetes into remission. And if you look at the results, from various studies, but if we take the diabetes.co.uk group, which is probably the closest equivalent to what we're doing. And similarly, the Verta group in the US, with their online programs. I mean, they're both having 50% remission rates for their diabetes. The other 50% are reducing their medications, or if they're on insulin, getting off their insulin or lowering their insulin dose. So that's pretty dramatic, and that's something that's not supposed to happen, according to traditional orthodox medicine. You're not supposed to be able to put diabetes into remission. And so, there's a lot of reluctance by the medical profession, I guess, to acknowledge that, because we're very used to sort of drug. We manage these diseases with drugs, and we can't put into remission with drugs. And yet, here are these people saying and showing the evidence that you can do that through diet. And so, there's a lot of reluctance to acknowledge that. But the facts are there. I mean, you cannot deny, the facts that are published in the research, and also, the experiences that people have. I mean, I think David Unwin's story is a beautiful story about, here's a guy, similar vintage to me, been in practice for years, was pretty disillusioned with medicine, and literally stumbled across low carb as an approach to diabetes, and completely revitalized his practice, changed his practice. He's now, I think, got almost 100 of his patients into remission with type 2 diabetes, and he's just a humble GP in the north of England, and who's been advocating this for the last while. So it just shows that it's not that that any doctor could do it. But we just got to get enough people on side. So, I think it's a really exciting concept. I mean, here is arguably the major health problem in our society. I mean, we've shut down the whole country for a pandemic that that is a fraction of the problem of type 2 diabetes. And are we shutting down the problem? Are we shutting down all the junk food? Are we shutting down all the things that are contributing to type 2 diabetes? Maybe we should. It's just interesting, that there's these two, contrasting sort of approaches to a disease, and one's become, very sexy and popular, and we've become obsessed with it, and type 2 diabetes just lurks in the background, creating havoc, and yet we do nothing about it. And we've now got a approach that can manage that disease, and yet we're still reluctant to take that on. So I guess that was the reason behind tackling diabetes. We initially thought we might license the UK program, because it's quite a good program, but there were various issues related to that made it very, very difficult. So we decided to take the plunge and have a go ourselves. And Paul and Nicole have been fantastic in putting together lots of material. We've just actually, this last few days, sent out a survey to our initial cohort of members, and the responses have been fantastic. There's so many people responding, saying, that's changed their life. It's made such a difference to them. And I'm not telling most people, in this community, anything they don't know. And we've all experienced that. I mean, I think treating diabetes with a low carb approach is one of the most satisfying things, that we do, because it's, it is this incredibly difficult disease and with horrendous consequences. And yet, here's an approach that seems to work. I think it's so exciting. And, we can really tackle this type 2 diabetes. So our aim, there's, as people probably know, there's almost 2 million people in Australia with type 2 diabetes, and probably another 2 million with pre-diabetes. So 4 million Australians. That's a pretty significant percentage of our population, particularly of those over 50, say. And it's definitely the number one medical problem in the older community in this country. And so our aim is to put 100,000 of those 2 million into remission through our program. We've probably got about 100 at the moment, but we've got a bit more than that. But we're getting there, it's just managed to get the word out there, and we're going to distribute the app more widely in the next few weeks to the low carb community and so on. So give people access to it. But I'm really excited about it, and I think it's probably the most exciting thing I've done in my life. And I want to see this through and really make an impact, because we know it works. And it's you sort of feel as though you have if you have this duty, that really responsibility to let people know. And I think we all feel that. I know you feel that, Tracy, and I think a lot of the other speakers at the summit and so on feel that. It's like you've discovered something magical, and you need to let everyone know about it. And the amount of good that we can do with this is it's very exciting.
Absolutely. Just a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about. So, they say that it is a progressive and chronic disease. So my argument to that will be, well, yes, if you eat the way we are told to eat, it is, isn't it?
Yep.
So that,
Yep.
So I guess in a way they're not wrong. But what you're saying and what we're saying is, if you change all that, then it definitely doesn't have to be like that. And, I look at my kids, I've got a few of them, and I look at them and I just think, I am so glad that I know now what I know, not what I thought at 40, which was the guidelines. And, of course, I personally got into trouble with my health, but I just look at them and just think I'm so grateful that I know, because everywhere they go apart from here, they're told the opposite of what I tell them at home. So it is kind of like, we're pushing uphill, but at the same time, as you say, once you experience it, you can't unsee it. And it is becoming like this big groundswell that will probably force change from the ground up. As opposed to, I say to a lot of my clients, well, if you're going to wait for the government to turn around and say, this is what you should eat, or if you're going to wait for the doctor you go to say, well, how about you try lifestyle instead of, this pill, well, there's a few more out there that will help you with lifestyle now. But if you're going to sit around and wait for that, well, you probably won't be around for,
That's right. It's really unfortunate. I mean, excuse me. I don't necessarily blame, the doctor so much. I mean, we all, stay in our comfort zone, and for doctors, our comfort zone is medications, because that's what we're taught. In my whole medical, 6 years of medical school, I didn't have a single lecture on nutrition or exercise or anything like that, lifestyle, and things haven't improved that much since then. So what we're good at, what we know about, is drugs, surgery, drugs, medications. So doctors feel comfortable in that world. They don't feel comfortable in the nutrition world. They don't understand nutrition. They don't understand exercise. They don't understand these lifestyle issues. So, they tend to sort of ignore them or fob you off or so on. So, which is sort of sad because, the logic, it's just so logical, that, we know that, diabetes is a disease of carbohydrate intolerance. It's as simple as that. You don't tolerate carbohydrates. So, what is the recommend? What do? You restrict carbohydrates. As my kids would say, but and yet what is the recommended diet for type 2 diabetes? It's a low fat, high, complex carbohydrate diet, because of this obsession we have with fat, that it's been, blown out of the water and disproven, and there's ample evidence that it's not the most important thing around, and yet, we still stick to that, I visited a friend in hospital recently who'd nearly died from his diabetes. He had some toes chopped off. His kidneys are not good. And I happened to be there when he got his breakfast. And his breakfast consisted of fruit juice, some sort of syrupy stewed fruit sort of thing, white toast with jam, and some cornflakes. Now, if you want to find a way to guarantee that people stay diabetic for life, you just feed them that stuff. And this is in hospitals. What are these people thinking? How can they justify that? Oh, it doesn't matter what you eat, just take more drugs, more insulin. Well, that's great. Who benefits from that? Not the patient. It's just this whole concept is just so wrong. And yet it's so simple. If you had an alcoholic, you wouldn't give them alcohol. We don't give people with celiac disease a whole lot of gluten. And yet we give people with a carbohydrate intolerance a whole lot of carbohydrate. It just does not make. It just drives me crazy, really. I just get, tear what little hair I have left out in frustration because, it's just so obvious. It's not as if it's a really complex sort of thing to get, or really hard to understand. You don't tolerate carbohydrates, so you don't give it. It's just simple as that. And, and yet we have, the solution to, what I say is the biggest medical problem in the world. We have a simple solution that people are ignoring. It's just so depressing, really,
So do you think in terms of the individual, I see this, there's a bit of a, I don't know if it's the fact that we think we're bulletproof or, we tend to not worry about our health so much until we have a crisis or, we're forced to with some sort of issue. And, I know you would know people and we know people, we've got family and cousins who, unfortunately didn't get a second chance. Their first sign was a heart attack, gone, and they're not even 50. Exactly. So, totally preventable. And it is, as when what we know, it's heartbreaking to watch. But do you think that because of the fact that you don't wake up one morning with type 2 diabetes, it's harder for people to get their head around the concept of it being this sort of long-term thing,
Yeah, absolutely. And it develops over probably 10, 20 years, without people knowing. My own experience was that, I just gradually got fatter. I put on 0.5 kilogram a year, every year, like many middle-aged males. I seemed to be okay. I felt okay, and apart from getting a little bit thicker around the waist, I seemed to be okay. If you'd asked me, was I healthy? I'd say, well, yeah, I'm healthy. But the reality was, I was obese. I'd had a fatty, my blood test showed I'd had fatty liver for 10 years. Like a typical doctor, I totally ignored it. I sort of just pushed it to a side and so on. My triglycerides were high. I ignored that. Because I was on a low-fat diet, so I was doing the right thing. So we tend to ignore things until, as you say, we have a crisis. And it's amazing how people have a heart attack. They'll do anything. You tell them to change their diet. Yeah, I'll exercise. Yeah, I'll do that. But as you say, sometimes you don't get that chance. the heart attack actually kills you, and you never get that chance to improve your lifestyle. So, but surely it makes more sense to do that, to prevent. But we're very reluctant to make those sort of changes because, as you said, we're bombarded, from all sides about what we should be, what's good to eat, what's flavoursome. You've got to enjoy life. Everything in moderation. A balanced diet. All that sort of stuff. I mean, that's the marketing. And marketing people are very clever. And they're backed by huge amounts of money. So our little voice saying, how about eat healthy, is drowned by the multitude of voices saying, look at this food, it's delicious, it's it's tasty, it's cheap, you should have lots of that, have your junk food, and we know that what's changed in the last sort of 40 or 50 years while these diseases have got out of control, and it's it's not exercise. People, we're not doing as much exercise. No, that's actually not true. We're doing about the same amount of exercise that our parents and grandparents did. They may have done it more in relation to their job, but we do it more, in recreation. So, you can't blame exercise, a change in the amount of activity. It's just diet. We have gone from the whole food diet that my grandparents would have eaten of, meat and fish and eggs and dairy and fruit and veg, to this sort of processed and ultra processed food diet that we have now. And you've only just got to look at the consequences. We're getting fatter and sicker every year. A country like Australia, we're one of the fattest countries in the world. Our obesity, we're in the top 6 of the obesity scale of large Western countries, and yet, how could we be such an unhealthy country? We're a wealthy country. We've got a fantastic climate. We've got access to so much good food, and yet, we're one of the fattest countries in the world. It's appalling, and a quarter of our children, more than a quarter of our children, are overweight. That's a scary thing, and not surprising. And they get weaned off onto sugar. Basically, they're all sugar addicts by the age of 5. It's because sugar is, it's everywhere, and we've come to expect things to be sweet. All foods are sweet now. That's become the new normal. And that's the food industry has been very clever in developing these foods. So I think it's got to start from birth. Really, we need to think about what we're doing with our kids, and I admit, we were terrible with our kids' nutrition. In retrospect, where they were, they went off from breast milk onto apple juice and stewed fruits and rice, all the sort of things that people have been cheap, easy foods, it's a wonder they've got any brain cells left, to be honest. But, sometimes I wonder whether they have, but but yeah, it's got to start then, and we've got to change the way we think about food, especially with our kids, because we all, as parents, we all think the most important thing in our lives is the health of our children, and yet we're doing everything we can to make them sick. It might not be now, but it'll be. We're setting them up for a lifetime of chronic disease, and that's terrible. And we're not doing it deliberately. We're doing it out of ignorance, and we've got to get that message out there that it's you don't give sweets as treats or McDonald's vouchers as treats. When you do well at sport or something like that, you give them a voucher for a swimming lesson or something like that. I mean, it's just, we've got to change the whole mindset of our society, because otherwise, we're just going to get sicker and sicker. It's really, I think it's really at a crisis point in our society that unless we make these changes, the rates of chronic disease are just getting so high. I mean, we're actually going to start the lifespan will start reducing. We've steadily increased our lifespan, all along, but it's not going to continue the way we're going.
That's so right. But they'll keep getting better at drugs to keep us alive, won't they, for longer? But it's the quality, isn't it? The quality of life. That's what I always come back to. It's
yeah. It's not just quantity.
Keep you alive with a lot.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you don't want the last 20 of years of your life, to be burdened with chronic disease and kept alive by a whole bunch of medications and not being able to do the things you want to be able to do. You want to be able to live a healthy life until the end, not just not just eking out an existence in a nursing home and being useless to anyone and so on. So, I think you've really got to think, as you say, think about the quality of our life and the burden of chronic disease. We need to relieve it, our society, of the burden of chronic disease, and we know that the major cause of chronic disease is lifestyle issues, and the major lifestyle issue is poor diet. We know all that, and yet, why can't we do something about it? Because there are a lot of people doing incredibly well out of our ill health.
That's right. And I agree with you completely. I think it's a massive mindset. It's a complete shift we have to make. And, obviously seeing in schools, the canteens are rubbish. They do, they give lollies to kids to say well done. Just on the weekend, my son started soccer again, finally, after a whole year of not being able to play with COVID. And of course, out come the snakes at halftime. It's just so ingrained that people don't question it. So I really know, people watching this, please, I've been through the whole, like you, when I saw it, what I had done and fed my first 3 children, thinking it was healthy. I had to come to terms with that, and you do have to come to terms with that, but you have to also know it isn't your fault. You are doing the best you can with the knowledge that you have, but it's knowing then that when you get new knowledge, it's only power if you do something about it. So this is where this personal stuff comes in, that you get this new information. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to ignore it? Are you going to just say it's too hard and going to push it away, or are you going to do something about it and actually make some changes? And I think that's where us as individuals can really, we think, one person can't do much. Well, I think one person can actually do a huge amount, of influencing. And it's not about, Peter, is it? It's not about telling people, what it's like with family. If they don't want to listen, they don't want to listen, but you can still, you still show up, and you can still be someone that has a relationship with people, so that when the little seeds are planted and when the penny does drop, that they want to come to you and they want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, you keep hearing, and I'm sure you hear them, it's too hard. I couldn't do that. I couldn't give up bread. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. I mean, I would probably have said the same thing, to be honest, when I, before I started. But the thing that makes it relatively, and I'm not saying it's easy to do. We all sort of fall off the wagon every now and then, and so on. But the thing that's made it easier for me is that I just feel so much better. I mean, I've lost weight. I've reversed all my metabolic issues, so I can see all that. But just day to day, my energy levels, my sleep, I just feel so much better, and that is an incredibly motivating force to keep doing what you're doing. And you might have a bad day where you eat rubbish and so on, and you feel like crap, and you think, that's why I'm doing this, because that's how I used to feel, and so I think. Yes, it is difficult at times, because you are surrounded, as we've said, by all these sort of temptations, if you like, and other people, eating this, and people say, "Oh, don't be silly, you've got to live, just have a bit of it. You've earned it, all that sort of, we've heard it all a million times, and so on, and it's as if people are out there trying to sabotage your health. It's even people, your family or your people, your friends, and so on. I mean, I don't know what it is, whether they feel jealous that you've got the discipline to sort of do this sort of stuff, or whether they think you're not enjoying life because you're not eating all the crap. I mean, I can honestly say I enjoy every meal that I have. I mean, I eat really, really well, and yet I don't need any sort of crap. I eat low carb, and I'm it's we're recording this. It's 10:30 in the morning. I haven't eaten yet today. I said to my daughter, adult daughter, her family are living with us at the moment for a few months, but I said, we'll cook brunch. When I finished,
Lovely.
chatting to Tracy, and so I'm going to cook some eggs and bacon and some avocado, and that'll last me. I mean, you can't. It's delicious, and and then that'll last me till dinner, and I'll have I've got a friend coming tonight. I've got to bake some salmon, some spinach. We might have some berries and cream afterwards. A bit of a couple of little things of dark chocolate with a coffee after dinner. I mean, I couldn't eat like that. Well,
Yeah.
it's not hard. I mean, it's as long as it's a bit more difficult. You've got to be better organized, and you've got to, and especially if you want to do it, relatively cheaply, you need to be smart about the way you do things. But you can't tell me it's not a nice way to eat, and you can't enjoy food, and I'm getting hungry just talking about it. Actually, let's get into it. So I mean, it's difficult because you are surrounded by sort of negativity and people who are trying to sort of with the best of intentions maybe, but trying to sort of derail you. And but as I said, I think that the main motivating thing for me is that I just feel good, and then I just know it's once you've gone down that track and lost that weight and have that energy and so on, you never want to go back there. Because
No.
that wasn't a nice way to live, and yet at the time I thought, that was what I should be doing, eating the diet I was supposed to be eating and doing exercise and so on, and yet clearly, it was disastrous for my health. And I have no doubt that had I not, I'm now 9 years into low carb, and I've no doubt that I'd have been, fully fledged type 2 diabetic long ago. Really, my father developed type 2 diabetes at the age of 60. That's when I sort of changed my lifestyle. I was clearly pre-diabetic, fatty liver, etc., etc. Yeah, I reckon, I'd be full on type 2 diabetes, and I'd probably by now starting to develop some of those complications that we're so scared of. And I'm just so grateful that I found better late than never, as they say. I found out a lot later than I would have. In retrospect, would have been great to know this all my life, but at least I managed to avert in disaster. And I saw what my father went through with type 2 diabetes, and I'd always thought I'm not, I don't want to go there. And now, I feel very confident that I'm not going to go there. And, something else might knock me off, but it's not going to be type 2 diabetes, I don't think.
Yeah, that's all right. And so you say 9 years. So clearly it's sustainable, because that's definitely something I hear a lot from people that aren't, keen on the space. Oh, but it's not sustainable. So what's your view on the sustainability of low carb?
Well, I think the reason they say that is because most diets are not sustainable. You go on to your classic sort of low fat, low calorie diet, and it's not. I mean, you go on an 800 calorie a day diet, and it is not sustainable. I mean, I defy anyone to live on an 800 calorie diet, because you get hungry, you get hungry and angry, and eventually you crack. Because no, you can't be hungry, your whole time, and so on. So I think that's why people say that diets, are not sustainable. I guess the difference is that this is not what I don't actually use the word diet. I think this is just a lifestyle. This is a way of eating that because diet to me is something temporary, whereas this is not temporary. This is just, the way you do it. But I think the other main reason why this, way of eating is sustainable, where a low calorie or a low fat is because of hunger. I mean, fats and proteins fill you up. Carbohydrates make you hungry. So if you stick to a diet of fats, healthy fats and proteins, then you're not going to be hungry. I mean, I used to eat, 3 meals and 3 snacks a day. I used to have breakfast. I'd have a big bowl of muesli and so on. And by 10:30, I'd be looking at my watch saying, God, is it lunchtime yet? I'd be hungry again. So you'd have a muffin or a muesli bar or whatever. I mean, now I have 2 meals a day and sometimes 1 meal a day. And I'm never hungry. So I think that's hunger is or satiety, whatever we want to call it. That feeling of being full is the biggest reason why I think these changes, this lifestyle of this way of eating is sustainable, and all the others are not, because you can't keep going with and that's why people do all this yo-yo dieting, because they go on to these low calorie diets. They get they're miserable and hungry, and so they break the diet, and then are even more miserable and hungry because they've broken the diet, and and so on and so on and so on. So yeah, that's and people who I agree, people all the time, especially doctors, they've got this thing about keto or low carb, yeah, it's good in the short term, but it's not sustainable. Well, who says it's not sustainable? And there's no evidence that it's not sustainable. You look at the Verta results. They're now up to 3.5 years with their results. And their results are consistent the whole way through. Because if you're doing well, if you're feeling good, of course you're going to stick to something. And if you're not hungry, you're going to stick to it. So, yeah, look, it's initially it's not easy. You do feel a bit crappy for a while, and you feel as though you're missing out on things and so on, but. When you get those improvements in your health, it's not that difficult to sustain.
No, it's definitely not. So why low carb? Because I see often doctors or people I chat to, whatever, in the space, from various places, and they understand the science. So they understand that insulin resistance is the biggest factor we have to manage when it comes to really the majority of modern diseases at the moment. But then they go and say, okay, but then it's Mediterranean, or you just have to eat less meat, or you just have to increase your whole grains. Like this jump between understanding the science and then having a very different, or maybe even vegan, like a very different solution. I find that fascinating and very frustrating too in a lot of ways, because I don't understand how you can take the science and get such a very different outcome. So why low carb for you?
Well, it just seemed to be logical to me, that I needed to, I was insulin resistant. My serum insulin was very high. I had classic insulin resistance, so I needed to lower my my insulin levels, and lowering my carbohydrate is the obvious thing to do. I think a lot of these other diets that you mentioned, I mean, they're all better than the standard, the standard crappy diet we all have, and so that's why the research will often show that a Mediterranean diet, which is it's not the worst diet in the world. It's pretty low carb, but and although, to be honest, I don't like the term Mediterranean diet, because what does it really mean? I mean, the Mediterranean's a big place, and there's this sort of concept that all Italians do is eat pasta and all this. I mean, and people use it as a justification for low meat and so on. I mean, most Mediterranean countries have high meat intake.
Yep.
So it really is a very confusing term that I just don't like. It just doesn't tell me anything about the diet. It just seems to be lots of olive oil and I'm not sure what else. But I think that to me, the logic is that carbohydrate. I mean, ever since you've only got to look at the sort of the graphs of obesity levels and diabetes levels, to see when did they start skyrocketing. And it was really when they brought in the low fat guidelines, in the around the early 1980s and so on. And clearly, we replaced fat with sugar and carbohydrates. And so they became the low-fat, high-carbohydrate guidelines. So we've really done a beautiful worldwide experience of 40 years of a low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet. It's out there, and I mean, it's millions of the biggest, experiment in history, because we've had millions, probably billions of people adopt that diet, reduce the amount of fat in their diet and replace it with carbohydrates. And you've only got to look at the results. We've just got fatter and sicker every year for 40 years. And we continue to. Now, if you're running a business and the bottom line of your business was getting worse every year for 40 years, wouldn't you at some stage in that 40 years think, hang on a minute, maybe we're doing something wrong. Maybe we need to change something. But no, we just continue to advocate exactly the same diet and we get fatter and sicker. I mean, it just defies belief.
Yeah.
And it just shows you that despite that, all these external forces, the forces of the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the medical industry, can overcome that logic and sort of blind people to that fact to justify this diet. It's pretty scary, really, quite depressing. I mean, I remember when I first got interested in all this and started reading, and I used to get quite depressed. That I mean, I was a member of the medical profession that it stuffed things up badly. And we're not really changing much. I mean, there are more and more, as you mentioned. I think there are more and more doctors coming on board and questioning, the dietary guidelines and the way we've been eating and becoming aware that low carb is at least an option. But geez, it's slow, and there's a lot of people who are doing very well with the status quo. Thank you very much. We don't want to change.
Yeah.
Quite sad and depressing. I'm almost sometimes embarrassed to be a doctor. The way we behave and the way we've and this is we've created this. We've created this epidemic of type 2 diabetes. It hasn't happened by accident. We've told people to eat carbohydrates, to stop eating fat and eat sugar and carbohydrates. It's pretty depressing. But things are going to improve. Let's not be depressed. Let's be positive.
Well, so we're not going to end on that note.
No,
but what
can't.
I wanted to point out is that you said you were 60, when you discovered this, and look at your health. This is what I want people to understand is you can't change the past. Nobody can go back and change the past, but we can absolutely change the future of where we're heading. And, that comes with making different choices just in every single day. And I think the understanding the brilliance of our body and how it is always trying to get us back to health. And once we just start feeding it correctly, there is such, an amazing healing system that we've got in there. Now, where people that are listening, there may be some parts that, there will be medication needed for that you can't actually fix, but you can certainly improve so much. And, you've seen it, you've done it. I know. There's so many people out there that have done it now, but I think we never underestimate that healing power of our body. And that, I think, is always going to give us hope that as an individual, there is always something we can do.
Yeah, I mean, the number of stories of people I know and so on who've had most amazing, medical turnarounds. People, with Parkinson's disease, with dementia, with bipolar syndrome, with depression, with chronic pain, with osteoarthritis, who've dramatically, all they've done is change their diet, and the change has been life-changing. You've changed my life. How many times? It's the most wonderful thing you hear. I mean, it just, I'm very happy to keep hearing it. But I mean, it's, we get that a lot, and it can't be just coincidence. It's not an accident.
Mm-mm. It's definitely not
You
an
know,
accident. Definitely not. And I'd love you to finish, Peter, back to defeat diabetes. I know it says
yeah.
defeat diabetes, but it's not just for people who are already type 2 diabetic, is it?
No. I mean, we want to, the best way to eliminate something is prevent it, really. And I think, particularly if you've got, sort of what we call pre-diabetes. If you're overweight, you've got hypertension, you've got, high triglycerides, or so on. Or even if you're just concerned, I mean, if you've got a family history of type 2 diabetes, or someone with type 2 diabetes, and you don't want to go that way, it's really it's a lifestyle for life. It doesn't have, you don't wait till you've got diabetes. It's too late then. Do it now, and you won't get diabetes, and you'll have all these other benefits, and you'll feel fantastic. You'll have so much more energy, and your thinking will improve, and look, I could go on for sleep improves, and I used to be my wife will tell you, a horrible snorer, and I've been had testing for sleep apnea and all that sort of stuff, and and nothing had helped, and literally losing the 13 kilograms I lost in 13 weeks, my snoring disappeared completely because I reduced. I mean, it seems it's more the sort of fat tissue in your tongue and the back of your throat, and that was reduced, and I stopped snoring. And my sleep is so much better and more refreshed. And so there are so many different aspects of your life that are improved by changing your lifestyle in this way. I mean, so it's so rewarding to do it, and that's why you keep at it, because you feel so much better.
You do. And of course, your brilliant book, A Fat Lot of Good. So the people that actually buy the summit have the chance to win 1 in 5. I've got 5 copies I'm going to give away. There it is. It's a brilliant book. Yeah, funny that. And if people haven't read it, please go and get it and give it. It's the book we give to family who may be curious, that might sort of say to us, tell us about what you do. Or, they might say to my husband, you're looking so good at 57, what's going on? And he'll whip out your book. And it is, because it's just such a great book that it's so easy to understand. It covers the basics, really. And also, my mum, I think she's given it to about 4 GPs in Sydney, as well. It's just, you've no idea how much it's been put out there. But so it is a great book. So thank you so much for writing that book and just putting it in plain language for people as well. And then obviously all the work you do. I hope you never retire. You and Prof Noakes, can just keep going on and on and on and on and on.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Prof Noakes, because we've actually been friends for 30, 40 years probably, way before we both discovered low carb at roughly the same time, because we were both in the sports medicine, sports science world, and we've been speaking at the same conferences for years and years. So I obviously defer to his amazing mind, and he's been inspiration to me and to everyone. But it's been a lovely friendship we've had over all that time, and we've been on a journey together, which has taken us into some really interesting places. So and Tracy, just I couldn't be remiss in not congratulating you on what you're doing. Not just with the summit, but with your coaching and just spreading the word and so on. I mean, I think you're an inspiration to many of us, and I really congratulate you on what you're doing. So keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you, Peter. That's lovely. Thank you very, very much. Well, I am very grateful for your time, and for everyone watching. For Peter, everything's down below. If you want to check out Defeat Diabetes, please do it. Buy his book if you didn't win it. And of course, just know, I think know that any change is hard at first. That's just how how we work as human beings. But it does definitely get easier. And I, for one, as a mum of 5, I want to see my kids get married if they want to get married, and have children if they want to have children. But I want to see, I want to be around and be in a capacity to do it. And what we eat is going to play a huge, huge role on that. So, yeah. Thank you very much.
Been a pleasure, Tracy.